important that you position the program card correctly in the selection box. Practice several different patterns until you feel comfortable. Turn the decorative design adjustment dial to 0, insert the card, then turn the decorative design adjustment dial to anything other than 0. Find the tiny pattern number in the right-hand margin of the card. Turn this number down so that it is hiding just behind the white plastic ruler and impulse up 2 or 3 times. Here's how you can check to see that you're right. The selection box will sound one continuous beeping tone and the green light will be on. The brown indicator arrow will be pointing up, and a tiny number 1 indicating the first row of your design will be slightly above the reference mark at the right side of the selection box. Geometric program cards can be used to knit many different techniques, such as Fair Isle, the technique we just finished, Jacquard, which is a 2-color double bed knitting, lace and garter stitch variations. No matter which technique you're knitting, all of the cards are started in the same manner. Now you must learn how to set your design in the center of the knitted fabric. Look at card 2, pattern 7. You have several different options. You can place a flower directly in the center of the fabric, or you can arrange the design so that the flower is on your shoulder or perhaps a pocket. You could also decide to place the space between 2 flowers in the center of the work. All of these choices are up to you. Let's start with centering a design. To place the flower directly in the center of your work, first move the cursor back and forth by hand. This moves the pattern scanner, which reads the program card, back and forth inside the selection box. This flower is 24 stitches wide. Its center is at needle number 16 on the program card. Stop the scanner directly in front of needle number 16 on the white plastic ruler. Set the program changer switch to neutral. This disconnects the pattern scanner in the selection box from the cursor. You can now move the cursor back and forth along the needle bed without the scanner moving. Set the cursor across from the needle that is in the center of the fabric. This is usually the first needle left of 0. Reconnect the cursor to the program scanners by setting the program changer switch back to geometric. These simple steps enable you to place your design wherever you want it to be in your fabric. The design radiates to the edges from the center point. Turning the machine on or off does not affect the center, nor does increasing or decreasing or shaping of the knitted pieces. The only way to adjust or change the center is to set the program changer switch to neutral, then move the cursor to another area of your garment. All of the program cards provided with your white knitting machine can be centered using column 1 of the geometric program card as the center stitch in your garment. For pattern 2-7, this would place the space between 2 flowers in the middle. Move the cursor back and forth by hand until the program scanner inside the selection box is at square number 1 on the geometric card. Set the program changer switch to neutral. Bring the cursor to the first needle left of 0, then set the program changer switch to the geometric position. The design is centered. You can now remove card 2 and insert card 5, and because you centered to column 1 on the program card, all of the designs will be centered. If you'd like to place this flower on the part of your fabric that will become the shoulder of your garment, move the cursor until the scanner is in the center of the flower. Set the program changer switch to neutral, then bring the cursor to the needle that will be in the center of the shoulder portion of your garment. Set the program changer switch back to geometric. These simple steps enable you to place your designs wherever you want them to be in your knitted fabric. Now that you know how to insert and center a design printed on a geometric program card, you must also know what to do if you must stop in the middle of a design, for instance when you shape a neck opening, or if you make a mistake while knitting. Using program card 2, pattern 5 as an example, I'll begin my design. As I move the carriages back and forth along the needle beds, the selection box reads the program card to create designs. The actual row of the pattern is down inside the selection box being read by the program scanners, and you can't see it. So that you know where you are in your pattern, the numbers for each pattern row are shown outside the selection box across from the reference mark at the right side of the card opening. Whenever you stop in the middle of the design for any reason, you should first check the row of your pattern that you are currently knitting or about to knit. This is shown across from and slightly above the reference mark. As an example, I'll stop now to shape the neck of my theoretical garment. The pattern row that I'm about to knit is 11. Write this down, it's easy to forget. Also mark the direction of the indicator arrow at the left side of the card opening. Is it pointing up or down? Check your row counter and write down the row number on which you divided. Now, using several 20 eyelet tools, you can remove the stitches from the left side of the knitting machine in order to knit in a fair isle pattern on the needles on the right side of the knitting machine only. Place the 20 eyelet tools on the needles, pull straight up, then push straight down, dropping all of the stitches onto the tool. Tightly cap the 20 eyelet tools, then drop them down between the needle beds. Take all non-working needles completely out of work. Move the left cursor stop in and tighten it at needle 15 left of 0. This is 15 needles beyond the last needle in working position at the left. Remember that moving the cursor stop does not affect the centering of your design. Adjust the weights and edge claws so that the knitting is balanced on the right side of the machine. Proceed with the knitting at the right side of the needle beds, shaping the fabric as called for in your pattern. When decreasing stitches, be sure to take non-working needles completely out of work. When the right side of the garment is completed and the knitting is cast off, it's time to finish the left side. Set the row counter back to the row on which you divided the knitting. Reset the cursor stop at the left side and tighten the right cursor stop at needle 15 right of 0. Rehang the knitting onto the left side of the needle beds, being careful to hang the stitches onto the original needles. Now you must reset the selection box so that it is reading the same row as the row on which you divided the knitting. That was row 11 with the indicator arrow pointing up. No matter which row the selection box is currently reading, you must set it to read row 11, arrow up, of your pattern. Use the impulse switch to move the card one row at a time until you arrive at the correct row number. If the indicator arrow is pointing in the wrong direction, impulse once beyond the row number you want, then impulse once in the opposite direction. Your row number and indicator arrow will then be exactly as they were when you divided. It's as simple as that. Your design will continue across your garment without interruption. Use the same technique if you should make a mistake or jam the carriages in the middle of a pattern. Use card 2, pattern 5 as an example. Everything is fine as you're knitting along and suddenly a knot in the yarn that you didn't see causes the carriage to jam in the center of a row. What do? First check the pattern row that you're currently on. The program card does not advance until you clear the cursor stop at the end of a row, so the row number across from and just above the reference mark is the row number now knitting. Write it down. You must also write down the direction of the indicator arrow. The knot in the yarn occurred on row 3, and the indicator arrow is pointing down. Now you can disengage the carriage from the knitting. First, loosen the cursor stop at the beginning of the row and push the cursor away from the carriage. Did you notice that the selection box just moved the card? Think how bad it would be if you hadn't written down your pattern row. It would be very hard to figure out where you were in your pattern. To disengage the carriage from the needles, pivot the needle razors on the second color yarn guide to the outside. Pull down slightly on the outside edge and pivot. Lift up on the locking levers at the side of the carriage, then slide the carriage back to the beginning of the row. Be very careful to lock the carriages back onto the slide rails of the needle beds. Now you must make the row of needles look exactly as they did before you jammed that carriage. All stitches must be behind the needle hooks. To make this easy, move all of the needles carrying stitches behind the latches to holding position. Using a 2 or 3 eyelet tool, rehang the stitches onto the same needles by pushing down, then pivoting the tool to the back. Repeat this operation for all affected needles. Now you must rip out the stitches in the row that have already knitted in order to reknit the entire row. You must rip both the main and the contrast color. Replace the needle razors on the second color yarn guide and reset the cursor stop to 15 needles beyond the last needle in working position at the right side of the knitting. Slide the cursor back to the beginning of the row. Using the impulse switch, move the program card back to the row it was reading when the carriage jammed. Be sure that the indicator arrow is pointing in the right direction. Once you've done this, you can continue knitting and no one will ever know you jammed. One last note on resetting your pattern. If you jam on a double row function, you must rip back to the beginning of the double row sequence. This usually means that both the main and contrast color yarn are at the right. Set the row repeat switch to the center position. Impulse the program card back to your pattern row, then set the row repeat back to the lower position. This ensures that you will be starting at the beginning of the two-pass sequence for each pattern row. If you must rip out pattern rows, keep in mind how the MNMR works to advance the program card. Let's say you're using Program Card 2, Pattern 2. This is a symmetric pattern with 8 rows. It is read by the selection box in this sequence, rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, then 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and so on. If you jam the carriage on row 7 and the indicator arrow is pointing up, then discover you must rip out 2 rows, you must know where to set the program card and indicator arrow in order that you'll still be in your pattern. To make this easy, on a separate piece of paper, list your pattern rows and indicator arrows as they are read by the selection box. Cross off the row on which you jammed and the 2 rows beneath it that you had to rip. Now it is easy to see the row that you must reknit in order to start your pattern again correctly. It is row 7 and the indicator arrow is pointing down. You now know your electronic basics for built-in patterns and geometric cards. Soon we'll look at decorative designs, jacquard fabrics, and garter stitch and lace techniques. Until then, have fun knitting with white.